Welcome back. You're watching In the Market here on AM Live. We continue with the conversation at pace on the state of economy, and we're trying to see also currently how the Nairobi Security Exchange is faring on, which is a harbinger or a bellwether, so to speak, of what is really happening as far as the economy is concerned. 15 companies have so far listed profit warnings as it is, and we're eagerly waiting to see how this will also pan out this year as well. So what does this really tell about the state of the economy? And I'm holding court this morning with Sanchen Gudkar, who is the chair of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Also, we have the founder and CEO of the Optivent Group. This is George Washuri. We are also holding court this morning with Bill Okero, who is a former senator and also a businessman. And we have also Dr. Collins Odote, who is a lecturer at the University of Nairobi and also a columnist with the Business Daily. So before we took a short break, yes, I don't know, we were still with you, Sachin, right? So maybe just to take the conversation and drill it deeper a bit, looking at NSE and from the front of also the real estate that we will be discussing much later robustly. Collins Odote, you can just give us your headline thoughts.
You know, you asked us a question about the NSE, about the reductions, and I wanted to reflect back to 2003 to 2007.
Yes.
During the period of the first term of President Kibaki. And as they were implementing the economic recovery strategy, you remember two things about the NSE. You remember one, new Kenyans starting to buy shares for the first time. You remember almost every Kenyan getting excited about getting dividends. Those are the two things you remember. I don't know the last time anybody on this table, one, got dividends, or two, was excited about getting dividends.
You got from Safaricom.
Even when you get it,
from Safaricom,
the amount of excitement is not there because it is too little and too far between. That's an indicator of an economy that is depressed. I think Bill is the one who was saying that, you know, the economy is the cash cow. And I think how you treat your cow is extremely important. An economy that is depressed as it is with what we see from the NSC, with the closures of companies, with the layoffs of staff, I think it's an indicator of a bigger problem. And that bigger problem requires serious action. Unfortunately, the actions that we see is about trying to get more cows and not treating the cow. So you have a cow that is depressed, a cow that is malnourished, and you're trying to look for how do we get more cows. And what does that mean? Increased taxation. Let's try and have turnover tax. Let's try and have this tax. That's what you're focusing on. Instead of focusing on the two fundamental things. Number one is how do we fatten the cow? That means what kind of incentives are you putting into the economy? I think that's the first. Number two is what do we do with them? What are we doing with the milk? And that's about expenditure. I don't see enough work being focused on what we are doing with the milk. Instead, we're just focusing on more taxation. And if somebody is already on his knees, a lot of businesses, however much you continue taxing them, they won't be able to pay you more. And I think that's the one thing that we need to start asking ourselves. How do we make the environment much more conducive for people to be able to produce more? And I don't think there's sufficient conversations taking place on doing that. Even if you watch the president's speech, except for the stimulus packages that he gave to a few places, you don't see the conversations required in terms of what is the environment for manufacturing. What are we doing with the cost of power?
I think the...
And let's say from George, then we'll come to you, Sachin. Yeah, we'll come to you, Sachin.
I think on NSE, of course, we are not there ourselves. We have seen older companies having a lot of challenges. And the challenge I take to entrepreneurs is to ask themselves, are we doing business the same way we did many years ago, or things have changed? I would say things have changed. And I do mentorship to small business people and the young people. And I've seen a lot of changes in technology. The way business is done, now business has moved from the traditional way of doing it to digital platforms. And other than the ones that we have seen that are either retrenching, either firing people, we have seen young companies coming up, hiring people. A good example is Optivent. This year we hired 30. Last year we hired 120 permanent employees, because our model is slightly different, and there are many companies out there that are coming up. And that's why I urge the government to identify those companies coming up with new technologies, new way of thinking, new innovation, so that the jobs that we are losing from the older companies, they can be replaced by the upcoming companies, and they only need some nurturing. You know, there's one proposal I always put on my blogs, that the government can be able to nurture these tech companies. whereby they say if you register a company today, you are given 3 years tax holiday so that you are able to come up and hire more people. But with conditions that if you get this tax holiday for 3 years, you must employ maybe 10 people. So these 10 people, remember, you are paying pay as you earn.
Yes.
And Dubai, you know that KRA get almost half of the money from payroll. So let's not all die because other companies are having challenges. There are other emerging companies that are coming up, and I'm sure most of them are watching us. And I would like to encourage those young entrepreneurs coming up, take full charge, keep up the growth. Don't fear registering with the government, because at the end of the day, we have to pay taxes so that we're able to support our government. But of course, as we support them, they also take care of the milk, as the professor is saying. So it is not all gloom that a few companies are filing. There are others that we know of that they are also hiring. But the thing is that we saw government declaring that they don't have records of these companies. In fact, the estimate says we have about 5.6 million companies informal, not registered, but they are making money. And I'm happy that the strategy the government is using to pick that money is the wrong strategy. And I think the solution is with us, the private sector. We can be able to give them solutions on how to harness these upcoming companies. One of the ways is to massage them, is to persuade them, is to give them some benefits so that they are bold enough to come and say, I'm doing business online, but now I'm ready to go to a Sharia house, register, and pay this presumptive tax. So that's the way to go.
Right. Let's hear from Bill Okero. We'll come to you, Sechan.
I don't really support the view that overall, I think we need to look at the situation in overall terms. Yeah, if we look at certain sectors, yes, of course, there are sectors that always grow. Like in the tech industry, this is an area that is always growing in any country. But I think overall the situation is not really that rosy. If you look at NSCA, because I have a business that is engaged with the stock exchange, let me tell you, in the last few years, we've only had companies delisting. The last time we had an IPO, a new company coming on board.
Yes.
It's many years ago.
So for the last decade, this is a new decade.
Yeah,
we've not had any listed company within the NSE as it is right now.
Yes, if there was growth, even if these tech companies were growing, we would be seeing companies listing on the stock exchange. But what we have seen is many prominent companies that have been delisting, and they've either gone under or they have one reason or the other, and now with many of them also showing these problems of profitability.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll find again probably in the next couple of years some companies delisting or something. So I think it does clearly show that the economy, and that is really in any country, that is the heartbeat. You look at the stock exchange and say, yes, at least something is happening. But if that is not happening, then it means we have a challenge. Down there is even worse. And the fact that it's worse is the realization by the president this week. The fact that situation is worse down there is what he realized this week when he started addressing the issues of coffee, tea, and the farmers, because that
and
is
the money in the pocket.
Yes, and that is where the country is. I mean, the 47 million Kenyans. 80% of them are down there. Yeah. They are dealing with the coffee, the tea, the farmers, the milk. Those are the people, and they're suffering. There's no money. And I think he said clearly, I want to see money in the pockets. Yes. We'll wait to see money. When they get money in the pocket, then all of us will see something happening in the stock exchange. Because those are the same companies that provide services, that provide goods. They're the companies manufacturing. They're the companies who are, So I think the economy is interlinked in many ways. So, but that does not change the fact that there are fundamental issues that the government needs to address overall in order to, and one of them being mentioned earlier, the issue of debt, because of the crowding of the finance and so forth. But the issue of debt is the single most important that drives all this appetite for tax. All this appetite for more spending by government, this, lack of rationalization and wastefulness. It's all because of trying to to get into this excitement of debt and borrow and spend. And I think this is something that would really change our lives if as the minister says, they cut down on borrowing. It really changes. And we cut down, and he said very clearly, we want to cut down our size. If they do that.
But is that pronounced by the minister as well, just a head fake? Because we know they're saying we are cutting down on borrowing, yet the government has raised the debt ceiling at the same time.
No, we are going to see. That's why we said everything they proposed is subject to implementation. I mean, that's what we started off with. We have to wait and see whether they're going to go through it. But that intention has been made, that they have realized that debt is a problem few months ago, that was not the picture. The government, especially the president, has been saying, what debt are you talking about? We're healthy. And we'll continue borrowing. Now the situation is, no, it's not healthy. We're not going to borrow. So I think even the mindset is changing. So hopefully, we will see what happens in reality.
We'll come to, let's get to Sachin before he loses his train of thought.
I think the SGR repayments come due now,
Yes.
which is going to add a further burden on a struggling economy. The important thing to recognize here is, are we going to keep on taxing the same people and milking them more and more, or are we going to widen the tax net? I disagree with you that yes, let's bring everyone in through this presumptive tax and so on. There are two scenarios to this. You have a kiosk owner who is selling fast-moving consumer goods at maybe a margin of 7% on the product. KRA wants to tax weird. On the other hand, we've got a massive informal and a gig economy, such as we know of hairdressers who earn 300 to 400,000 shillings a month, but they don't pay a cent in tax. So we have massive distortions and a massive tax base that is that needs widening. The issue is, how are we going to have a surgical effect on this rather than the sledgehammer of a 3% turnover tax, because that may be punitive and may actually drive a lot more small businesses to the ground, actually.
All right.
Yeah.
Actually, I did not say that presumptive tax, I support it. I don't support it. But my advocacy is government to support informal sector, the SMEs, the MSME, and to take back the NSE discussion. I think it's important for Kenyans to know that I have been attending the Ibuka program, whereby the upcoming businesses are being prepared to join NSE. So if you're out there doing a business and you want to join NSE through Ibuka program, you know, you are taught, you are trained on how to list on NSE. I think we should not shy away joining NSE, because that's the way to go. And I must say that for entrepreneurs out there, I say once again, if you don't change the way you do business, definitely we'll be complaining economy. And someone told me that when there are challenges, there are opportunities. Because sometimes I wonder, we have foreign companies coming to Kenya. In fact, in real estate, say, we are going to do business for the next 100 years. And we ask ourselves, how comes we Kenyan, we are complaining that there's no money in the pocket, there's no business? Is it the way we do business, or is it the way we need to change? Look at people like Uber, they came to Kenya. You see the figures they are posting. Look at Glovo, this company for food deliveries. Yet we have people who have got brains to do apps to deliver food. So money is actually being wired out of the country, yet we have the potential. I think we need to nurture the young people to tell them that there is still hope, because young people who are listening to us out there, they may say, wait a minute, I don't want to touch NSE. So even as we discuss the way economy is not doing so well, we need to inspire, to encourage the upcoming business people, the upcoming entrepreneurs. And that's the role of private sector ourselves. It's also the role of government. That's why for me, I advocate that we must have ways of mentoring, inspire these young people. I attended this presidential debate at Strasbourg, and we were all excited. In fact, we thought Gikoba is going to be like Dragon Mall in Dubai, whereby these people can be arranged in an organized manner. The infrastructure is good, but the discussion was, reached where the president released his speech. Nobody even went to Gikoba to see how these thousands of business people can be supported. So if we go that way, we can be able to uplift the business people. But let people have hope, because at the end of the day, we have to really do business in this particular country.
Thank you. Let's hear from Collins Oduote, then we'll sum it up. We'll go to now that particular tax that we're talking about, the turnover tax, and just discuss it robustly.
Yes. It's nice to sell hope, as George is trying to do, but that hope must be based on some reality. And I think the Gikomba example is the exact one. When I listened to George initially, he was saying, even though some of the big companies are delisting, there are small ones coming up. And I think for me, that's where the fallacy starts.
Yes.
It should not be that one dies for the other to come up.
We'll also die ourselves.
That's not good.
Every company dies, by the way. Even the companies in the US that were there 100 years ago, they're not there.
But the question is true.
Yes.
Talk of the conduct.
The bigger question is, why are they dying?
But not in a robust way.
The question why they're dying is, I think, what is concerning us. Because when you look at NSE, if you look at the numbers of companies that are listing, if you look at jobs that are being complained that are losing, that's where the challenge is. If we were saying that company X has died, but Y has come up, and in terms of employment, there is a zero sum, then you're saying the economy is not growing, it's stagnant. If we are employing more than we are losing, the economy is growing. The challenge is that, yes, there are few people being employed, but the amount of people losing their jobs are more than those that are getting. That's what worries me. The second thing, Dibal, you asked the question about will Yatani do what he's saying in terms of the debt? Will he not borrow? I think we need to be sympathetic with Yatani. He is in a problem anyway. It's a deep hole. So trying to balance between I am not borrowing, at the same time I need to borrow a little to do this, I think for me that's not the bigger problem. The bigger problem is going to be how he ensures that the ship is steadied. In that process, there are some things he will do in the short term that he shouldn't do, but they will be necessary for us to be able to stabilize things. And I think what he does over the next, for me the most important thing is going to be the final budget that's this year, the final one, the one that's approved. The next thing that's going to be is the report of the Controller and Auditor General for this year, because then we will know how much traction are we having in some of the proposals that are coming up.
Sachin, you heard?
I was just saying, flotation through the Nairobi Stock Exchange is not the only option available for entrepreneurs to cash in and exit. We've seen the advent of private equity come in. A lot of businesses have gone for private equity, and through private equity, after expansion and so on, they've been sold to multinationals and so on. So we've seen a different avenue open up apart from floating on the stock exchange. And I would say partly that's why we've not seen a recent flotation. But secondly, when investor sentiment is subdued, there's no incentive to actually go to the stock market and float your company. So realistically, I think there are other avenues open for exiting your business and apart from floating on the stock exchange.